One of the most annoying aspects about the basketball community in general is how we all act like we're definitive experts on every topic related to the game. Our ego gets in the way and doesn't let us acknowledge areas where we might not be the most knowledgeable. You never hear anyone say, I didn't watch 80s basketball, so I might not have the most insightful take. You never hear anyone say, I only watch the NBA, so it's not really my place to criticize the EuroLeague. That kind of humility and self-awareness is extremely rare. I can admit that I also have areas where I need to study up. For example, I hear people occasionally talk about Oscar Schmidt, and I'm not really too familiar with his game. Another example is Arvydas Sabonis. I remember him as an aging Portland Trailblazer, and I know he was a tremendous player overseas. But honestly, it's not like I've watched a lot of Sabonis Euroball before he was in the NBA. You're probably better suited asking someone from Lithuania or Spain just how good he was. But again, most people are not willing to admit the areas where they could learn more about the game. And because of this, I regularly see people making crazy and outlandish statements, which are clear bits of evidence that they actually didn't witness what they are talking about. Today, I have a few aspects of NBA history that you just cannot fully comprehend unless you actually saw it. And I also have a couple suggestions on what to watch if you want to become more enlightened on those aspects. So without further ado, let's get into it. First off, the dominance of prime Shaquille O'Neal. Draymond Green famously made comments that he could give Shaq some problems, and now, because of his ridiculous delusion, I regularly see posts like this circling around social media. Sure, there is the narrative that Dennis Rodman and Ben Wallace put the clamps on Shaquille O'Neal, but that's just not true. Here are Shaq's career averages, and these are his career averages specifically against Dennis Rodman and Ben Wallace. At best, they did a decent job of containing Shaq, but absolutely no one can put the clamps on the Diesel. In all of my years of watching the game of basketball, I've never seen anyone impose his will to the degree that Shaq did. Every once in a while, it does irk me when people refer to Shaq as the most dominant player to ever play, because newsflash, Wilt Chamberlain once existed. With that being said, I kinda get it from a certain perspective. Shaq's dominance wasn't just about scoring points over the opposing player, but it was his unparalleled bullying nature. The 7' 1 inch, 325-pound Diesel was not a gentle giant in the slightest. He would use his strength, his shoulders, his elbows, and his sheer ruthlessness to dunk over the top of opposing centers. He made real-life giants look like junior varsity players by how he overpowered them. Occasionally, they adapted and tried to flop, but Shaq would learn from that and sometimes held back on the punishing contact while the defender flailed backwards, and had an uncontested dunk at the rim as a result. Listen, there have been other all-time great scoring bigs in NBA history, like Kareem, Hakeem, and Wilt, but none of them did it like Shaq did, as each of those other centers relied more on the finesse aspect of their game. During his prime, everyone knew the ball was getting dumped down to Shaq repeatedly. General managers knew it, and they built teams with the intent to slow him down. The opposing head coach knew it, and he game planned for it. The analysts in the pregame knew it and discussed it at length. The millions of people watching the telecast knew it, the 20,000 people in the stadium knew it, and the centers assigned to guard him knew it as well. Yet when tip-off came, there was still nothing they could do to stop it. That should be the very definition of dominance. If you want to witness this yourself, I would watch the first 2 games of the 2000 NBA Finals. Pay attention to how Shaq imposes his will. Pay attention to how he controls the pace of the game, and even controls the opposing team's rotations. Watch how he gets numerous players in foul trouble, and how he simultaneously opens up the floor for his three-point shooting teammates. He was truly one of a kind, and honestly, I don't think I'll see a player like him ever again. Next up, the pace of play in the late 1990s. You really had to watch full-length games in that era to comprehend just how slow the style and pace of play was during those days. So I was on social media and I saw this post that said the greatest team Jordan ever faced scored 54 points in a finals game. Like, at some point, we gotta be serious about this stuff. Obviously, this is a ridiculous argument centered around LeBron and Jordan fans. Honestly, I don't care which side of the debate you're on. You're welcome on my channel. But what I do care about is the integrity of the argument. First off, calling the '98 Jazz, quote, the greatest team Jordan ever faced is either the most ignorant comment I've ever heard or is the most biased lie that I've ever heard. In the playoffs, Jordan did go up against super teams like the 1986 Celtics and the 1989 Pistons. Heck, I even think the '93 Suns and the '96 Sonics were much better than the '98 Jazz. But enough about this ridiculous statement. Let's focus on the aspect of 54 points. Nowhere in this post is there any credit given to Jordan and the Bulls' defense. It's simply that the Jazz sucked, which is obviously a way of twisting the argument in his favor. It also needs to be said that 54 points is not built the same as 54 points in the modern era. In the most recent NBA season, teams were averaging 114.7 points per game, which is literally the highest yearly average since the 1960s. In 1998, teams were averaging 95.6 points, which is nearly 20 points less. In 2023, teams averaged 88.3 shots per game and 34.7 three-point attempts per game, compared to 1998, where teams shot the ball 79.6 times and took roughly a third of the three-point attempts. But here's the thing, that was just the regular season numbers. The Bulls and Jazz were two older veteran teams, who especially loved to play in half-court sets. When these two teams met up, the pace was comically slower when compared to the modern era. In the '98 finals, the Bulls averaged 75.5 shots per game, and the Jazz averaged 71.8. Between both teams, you're talking about nearly 40 less shots per game and nearly 50 less three-point attempts. Of course, that kind of point total wouldn't be possible in the modern game, because the game is played with a completely different style. To further prove that it's about the eras rather than the quality of players, consider how LeBron freaking James was on the Cavaliers on December 2nd, 2006, and that team only scored a grand total of 63 points against the Houston Rockets. And again, that was 8 years later, when general offensive averages had picked up a bit. If you go watch literally any game from the 1998 NBA Finals, you'll see that the pace of play was insanely slow in comparison, as the Jazz never eclipsed 90 points, and the Bulls only scored over 90 twice. Honestly, unless you're a hardcore basketball fan who loves the nuance of the game, you'll probably find every game in the '98 finals extremely boring throughout. But that's how the game was played in that era, and drawing massive conclusions about a player or a team's greatness simply because they scored significantly less points is one of the most ignorant assumptions that someone can make. Last on the list is the Showtime Lakers offense. When I say this next segment is a change of pace, I mean that, literally. The Magic Johnson-led Lakers offense was absurdly fast, and I really don't think you'll grasp it until you watch them play at length. Sure, occasionally they would slow things down and feed the ball to Kareem in the post, but the bread and butter of their offense was their insane tempo. I've never seen a team insist on making the game an exhilarating pace as much as that Lakers team did. Most teams look to start a fast break based on how the defense is positioned and based on whether or not they have the numbers. But in many cases, Magic and the Lakers didn't even consider that and simply forced a fast break off the rebound because that was the game plan. To many people, this is why they see Magic Johnson as the greatest passer in NBA history, because he had to constantly make split-second decisions with pinpoint accuracy. Otherwise, it would result in a turnover. Most point guards and most other great passers of NBA history didn't have that level of pressure on them on a nightly basis. If you want to see what I'm talking about, I would watch Game 1 and Game 2 of the 1987 NBA Finals. At that time, the rivaled Boston Celtics were one of the slowest half-court teams in the entire league, and that series is a perfect example of the Lakers forcing another team to play at a tempo that they didn't want to. So what do you guys think? What is an aspect of NBA history that you absolutely had to witness in order to understand it? I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments section below. Thanks for watching as always. Make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.